FMLA doesn't fail because the law is confusing. It fails because employers treat it like paperwork instead of a process. An employee requests leave, a manager gets frustrated, HR thinks they're helping by being flexible. 6 months later, the Department of Labor is calling. In this episode, we're breaking down the most common employer mistakes that trigger FMLA investigations, real-world investigator hypotheticals that show how these cases unravel, and some practical steps employers can take to avoid becoming the next enforcement example.
Welcome to the HR Investigations Podcast, exploring the issues, challenges, strategies, and solutions. Sponsored by RPCHR and hosted by Natalie Ivy, an HR consultant, licensed PI, and author of the best-selling book, How to Conduct Internal Investigations, a practical guide for human resource professionals. And now, here's Natalie.
Welcome back, everybody, to the HR Investigations Podcast. I'm Natalie Ivy, and I'm glad to have you with me. So today we're going to be talking about the FMLA and what really happens when workplace decisions turn into formal investigations. Well, if you're an HR professional and you've ever thought, we try to do the right thing. Okay, well, this episode is for you. Well, most FMLA investigations don't really start with bad employers. They really start with managers who are trying to keep operations running, HR trying to be flexible, and no one fully owning the process kind of end to end. And then by the time an investigator gets involved, well, the issue isn't usually just one mistake, it's a pattern. Well, how do investigations actually begin into FMLA stuff? Well, it's usually employees who believe that their rights were violated. And by the way, they have two options. Number one, they could go to the DOL, to the Wage and Hour Division, or they can file a private lawsuit. But here's the part that catches a lot of employers off guard. The employee doesn't have to complain internally first. So here's kind of a hypothetical. Let's say you have an employee, and let's say his name is Charles, and Charles exhausts what he thinks is PTO while looking after an ill parent. Nobody ever told Charles the absences were designated as FMLA, and he's later disciplined for attendance. Well, from the employer's perspective, attendance rules were followed. From the investigator's perspective, the employee was never properly informed of his rights. Single gap, though, is notice, opens the door to an investigation. So let's talk about the two claims that drive most FMLA cases. Almost every FMLA investigation and really fits into one or both of these categories. The first one is what's called FMLA interference, and this is about the employee's access to leave. So the question is, did the employer deny or delay the leave? Did the employer discourage the employee from taking leave? Did the employer require that they work while they're on leave? And did the employer fail to restore the employee back to the same or the equivalent position? Well, intention doesn't matter. It's the impact that does. The second one is FMLA retaliation, and this is really about the consequences. So the question would be, was the employee treated differently because they requested or abused FMLA? So here's a hypothetical. All right. So let's say you have a manager. Let's say it's manager Bob. Bob documents performance issues for the first time with employee, let's call him Fred, immediately after Fred returns back from medical leave. Even if the performance concerns are legit, the timing, though, forces the employer to have to prove on paper that the decision that the manager Bob made was totally unrelated to the employee's FMLA. Well, what are the most common employer mistakes that the investigators see? Let's talk about patterns that investigators flag immediately. Mistake number one, late or even missing notices. Eligibility, rights and responsibilities notice, designation notices. These are not optional. Through an investigator lens, if these notices are late or missing, then definitely the credibility on behalf of the employer drops really pretty darn fast. Other mistake is mismanaging PTO and FMLA together. Requiring PTO incorrectly or failing to designate leave at all, that creates confusion that almost always is going to favor the employee. Mistake number three, inconsistent enforcement. One employee's absences are excused, another's become discipline. Ouch. Consistency problems are what often turn complaints into full-blown audits. All right. Mistake number four, intermittent leave frustration. Suspecting abuse is not evidence. So here's a hypothetical. All right. So let's say you have an employer here who tracks the employee's intermittent leave pattern, but never really follows the certification or even recert rules. The discipline issued later really looks like it's retaliatory, even if the attendance was genuinely disruptive. All right, mistake number 5, manager commentary, emails that they send that later could be discoverable, where a manager might say, oh, this leave is killing us, or we need to get somebody reliable. All of this will end up in the investigation file. Well, how do you investigate an FMLA complaint internally? Well, when you first have an FMLA issue that is raised, okay, employers often are going to rush to just defending themselves instead of actually properly investigating. So here's what a defensible internal investigation is going to look like. Okay, step 1 is you really got to define the allegation clearly. Is it interference? Is it retaliation? Is it both? Then you got to build a really clean timeline, lay it out. Okay, starting with the leave request, certifications, what notices were issued, attendance actions, and then what were the discipline decisions. The timelines will really reveal risk really faster than interviews. Step number 3 is audit documentation. Okay, missing forms definitely weaken otherwise lawful decisions. And step 4 here is interview the decision makers carefully. What did they know and when did they know it? What information did they rely on? And step 5, compare similarly situated employees. If the treatment isn't consistent, okay, investigators are definitely going to notice. So here are some practical employer tips to really avoid a visit from the Department of Labor and the painful wage and hour investigation. Well, let's talk about prevention here. The first thing is training your managers on FMLA triggers. Okay, employees don't need to say, I need to take FMLA for protections to apply. No, it is really up to employers. And get this, managers, supervisors, they act as agents of the employer. They need to be observant when there are situations, scenarios where FMLA is available to the employee. Okay. We can't expect every single employee to understand their rights just by putting a poster up in the company break room or on your own intranet site. So managers have to have an understanding of that. You need to centralize your leave administration. When you have decentralized decisions, that also creates inconsistent outcomes. You got to document in real time. After the fact explanations are rarely going to survive investigations. And then separate leave from discipline. Look, address performance issues either before leave or after a clean return, trying to do it during, okay? Not that you can't. I mean, like if you discovered a case, like there was one involving a company, don't remember the plaintiff, but it was involving a company called Wabash Centers. And there was an IT leader, senior leader, who really had, if you will, sabotaged the organization and then requested FMLA after he had been disciplined. And then while he was out, he was unhappy about it. Went out on FMLA, but then also they determined that he had sabotaged their system. So the FMLA certainly is not going to create like complete immunity from someone being disciplined, but just be very, very cautious of really the optics of it. Okay, so I'm not saying you won't ever be able to discipline someone on leave, but just know that if you're consulting with counsel, they're going to want you to tread very, very lightly. You better have a pretty darn good reason with why there's disciplinary action when someone is on leave. And assume everything will be reviewed. That means emails, texts, chat messages, all of those are going to become evidence. Now, FMLA investigations, they don't usually hinge on just one bad decision. They really hinge on patterns, timing, and documentation. So if your organization treats FMLA as a form really instead of a process, then the risk is going to compound pretty darn quickly. Before we wrap up today's conversation on FMLA violations, I want to leave you with this. Many FMLA issues don't start as policy failures, they start as investigation failures. When complaints surface, when documentation's inconsistent, when retaliation is alleged, or when medical leave abuse is suspected, the difference between compliance and litigation often comes down to how well HR conducts the internal investigation. And that's exactly why I'm hosting my next live virtual workshop, How to Conduct Internal Investigations, a practical workshop for HR professionals. This is a 2-day hands-on virtual training, and it's taking place on April 8th and 9th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So not theory, not academic discussion. It's practical, real-world skill building. And over the 2 days, we walk through planning and scoping investigations and conducting legally sound interviews. We talk about credibility determinations, how to handle documentation properly. and really how to write defensible reports and really avoiding retaliation and the compliance pitfall. So the program is approved for 10 contact hours through HRCI and SHRM. So those of you who are hunting some additional RECERT or PDCs, you can earn those, and you also will earn a certified HR investigator digital badge. You can showcase that on LinkedIn and other professional platforms. And if you register early, I'm including a complimentary author-signed copy of my book, How to Conduct Internal Investigations, a practical guide for HR professionals. If FMLA compliance, workplace complaints, or litigation risk are kind of part of your world, definitely this workshop is going to strengthen your confidence as well as your credibility. So if you want to register, the details are in the show notes, and I'd love to see you there. And until next time, always remember, the best investigation is the one you don't have to do. See ya.
Thanks for joining us today on the HR Investigations Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share the show with any colleagues who will benefit from our strategies and solutions. For free bonus resources, simply visit hr-investigations.com. And remember, if you'd like some help with improving your investigative skills, or if your organization is in need of an external investigator to help with the case, please get in touch with us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.